Welcome to our discussion about Pax Europiana, that's the overall title. Now in this video I want to focus on global good governance, especially about the reform of the United Nations. And this is very important to understand what I want to now do. I want to discuss the four pillars of global good governance, as I call them. That's a reformed United Nations. That's the OECD. I have made a video on that one already, as a union of market democracies. That's regional integration systems. That's basically like the European Union, like the African Union, and better states. Better states will be to focus on 15 deeply problematic states we have at the moment and how to improve them, help them to improve, and what we can do about these 15 hopefully in the future better states, because it's exactly 15 states which make a big problem for security and prosperity globally. So about the OECD as a union of market democracies, I have already discussed. About the EU, I will discuss, and about the UN, now the focus. We have now the 30 years of globalization after the victory in the Cold War. So we have this corona shock. So it's a very good moment to reassess how we can govern and what kind of global good governance institutions we need for the next 30 years of globalization, because no doubt it's a very beneficial force of freedom, of prosperity, unprecedented prosperity. And I will also in detail discuss this one in a separate video in this week, but I would like to say that the UN is in principle an organization which is very, very good. From the disaster of the problematic League of Nations, which was also built on very good intentions, but failed for many tragic events in the 1930s, and led to the Second World War, and the politicians, the political elite of especially the United States of America, they were already very much steeled and aware of the crisis of the League of Nations debate and the debacle. They were planning for a better new format of the United Nations in San Francisco Conference, and then it was established, and in principle it's a very good idea. And obviously, if it was planned that the five allied winners of the World War II, and they will lead this United Nations against fascism, and they will govern the world in a positive way in the spirit of their post-war, of their wartime alliance. But, you know, as we all know, this alliance was, together with the Soviet Union, an evil empire by itself, an alliance of convenience it was. And it's turned immediately in after 46, basically January, we can say, as the start of the Cold War, but definitely with this terrible siege of Berlin in 48, and absolutely for everybody visible with the Soviet-backed attack on North Korea against South Korea. That was really, I mean, everybody was aware of that, and it was a disaster. So from the beginning, unfortunately, and this very good plan for a very successful UN was hampered by the Cold War conflict. Then came, as the second big strike against the United Nations, came the winning of the communists in China in the Chinese Civil War in 49. And then they took over the seat of which was meant for democratic China, and so the communist China took over the seat later. And so 2 out of 5 were basically communist anti-democratic dictatorships, and so the whole system was from the beginning under immense pressure and couldn't live up to the reality. It got better in the 90s after all this difficult Cold War, and then a number of reforms were started, but obviously with the power structure of 3-2 in the most important decision-making body in the Security Council, not a lot of progress was possible in the fundamentals of the UN reform, and still we are in this question. So what I would like to do, because being completely aware that UN reform will probably not move very fast very soon, I would like to say that again, we as the Western world, as the EU, have to focus on bilateral, first of all, organizing the EU better, I will talk a lot about this in the next video, but also about the OECD and to turn that in the Union of Market Democracies, but also leading UN reform by certain things which we can do better as appearing more united at the global level. First of all, by ensuring that the UN Security Council seat of France is transferred to the European Union president. Yeah? So it's not Mr. Macron, it's Mr. Michel who should wield this veto power, obviously in coordination and in approval with the French, but this is the way we should lead the reform debate by self-declaring that this is now the united European seat in the World Security Council. That's a very important first step, because my proposal for UN reform is very much focused on regional integration systems. What I mean with that is the EU, and I have identified let's say 5 others, so I will outline them in a moment, but that's basically the concept that these 10 big states or regions will be represented in the UN Security Council of the future. In very simple terms, and I will go in great details to all of them, it's very important that the EU leads this debate, and that's why also Pax Europiana, the EU making a contribution also to the other regions to make very clear that these regional organizations taking over power in dealing with the global situation and also being responsible for regional peace and security in their region. And so I have already talked about China, why, and let me just, 10 members, yeah, that was the point, 10 members. Of course, the United States of America, it's already a union state, it's the most advanced in level of integration from forming a federation towards a state union. And then it's India, the world's largest democracy, and then it's the 2 problematic big states. That's the Russian Federation and that's China. And I'm actually in favor of freezing the seat in the Security Council of Russia, because it has broken in Crimea, Ukraine, Syria, everywhere, the rules of the United Nations. And with China, a serious dialogue on its future is absolutely necessary as well, but there is no Chinese tanks outside of China, and that's a very important differential towards the differentiation towards Russia, because there are Russian tanks in Ukraine, and there are of course Russian soldiers in Syria, and there's a lot of Russian influence and possible soldiers, mercenaries as well in Libya. So how is the situation? We have 4 big nations, basically federations in everything but the name. Hopefully soon federations and also the name in Russia, because I'm advocating for free federal Russia, for free federal China in the future, and we have to work for that. Yeah? India and the United States, that's 4. European Union, very clear. And then it's basically the African Union, the Organization of American States, and the Organization of Southeastern Europe, East Asian States, ASEAN, and the Commonwealth, and the Organization of Islamic Countries. Yeah? So this is the 6 federations or unions. I repeat, the American OAS, Organization of American States, the European Union, the Commonwealth of Nations, so that's 3, then the African Union, the Organization of Islamic Countries, and also the Organization of Southeast Asian countries in ASEAN. So that's basically, and all of them should have a seat in the reformed UN Security Council and yield a veto power as well. And obviously also Kosovo and Palestine should be member of the UN, and also France should be ceding the seat to the EU, obviously also the United Kingdom to the Commonwealth. And then also that new members, ASEAN, that's very important in the debate, that Japan and South Korea should join ASEAN to be in that regional political integration concept. Certainly not easy with the history, but it was not easy for us Europeans as well to unite. So this is something we can discuss. I think, and we can ask all sides in Southeast Asia to overcome their past problems. And also there is, of course, the situation that then some countries will be double represented or maybe triple represented. And that's not a problem at all. Some countries might be like in Africa, might be in the Islamic organization, or might be also in the Commonwealth. Good, then they have a vote in all three of them for the various assemblies, and hopefully the 10 global organizations or regional organizations with a seat in the UN Security Council will somehow be able to balance all the various interests effectively. But everybody has then permanently a seat in the UN Security Council. It's also very relevant because the representativity of these very big states is given, of the powerful states, but also united, the EU countries will also be a powerful voice for quite a lot of people, in that sense for 450 million. The Commonwealth will be strong, and also the OAS will be strong, and there can be a lot of then additional benefits, because once they have such a power with a seat there, they will also further integrate politically, economically, be also able to secure and provide security for the region and develop further on the regional integration path. And that's very, very important. Regional integration. Not everything has to be handled globally. Not America has to make peace everywhere. It can be also asked from the African Union to help countries in unstable phases. It can be asked from ASEAN. It can be asked as well in a global context from the OAS. And this is, I think, very much the way these 10 states and regions to work together for a better UN system in the coming years ahead. So that's the basic concept of the UN reform which I propose, Pax Europiana, UN Reform 2025. I'm pretty sure this will not be in 2025, but it should be the way the UN is reformed, and the EU should propose that, yeah? And then build strategic partnerships with all other regional integration systems, especially with OAS, ASEAN, African Union, and the OIC, and the Commonwealth, and then to work with these 5 in strategic partnerships to make sure that one day, hopefully in this decade, they will be able and willing to reform the UN as well in that direction. And maybe on the resistance of Russia and China, some things will be not possible. Okay, to re-establish the UN new against their will is probably not very realistic, but it would be an option as well if there's consensus with all other 8 regions and the main actors. But nevertheless, the constant and the clarity of these reforms, the transfer of the French seat to the European Union already, and the strategic partnership with the other regions, and providing technical assistance, free trade agreements, political coordination, will already benefit this kind of concept very much. Yeah? And gradually, by time, there will be the opportunity to also tell openly to the Chinese, we want to trade with you, for sure. We want to have political cooperation, infrastructure project, global cooperation. But, our long-term aim, with all respect, is a free federal China. And that might also one day encompass Taiwan once the conditions are met, once you keep really the democratic situation of Hong Kong under very clear respect, and then maybe also you will transform as China, and we will be very happy about it. We should not have any kind of doubts or hesitation to say that we don't like communism. Yeah? We don't want China to be a communist state. We don't want this kind of confrontations in Hong Kong. We don't want this kind of problems with Taiwan and this constant threat of Taiwan. So we don't want that. Yeah? Okay, we have to accept it at the moment, but let's be open. It's free federal China for the future. This is what we will want, what we will work. Yeah? Maybe not very actively, but as a mission declaration, and this is how it should be, and it will have its effect over time, by sure. I'm 100% sure, because also the Chinese want to live in normality, and when we somehow say that this is the free federal China we will work together with, there will be also takers on the other side who really see this positive vision possible. And the same is true for Russia. Obviously, now we are in this very deep confrontation with Iran, Syria, Libya, Georgia, and with many other political interventions of Russia in the Western world. But, time will come. There will be a time after Putin, maybe 2030, maybe 2036, I don't know, maybe faster, maybe later. But there will be a time after Putin. There will be a transformation. And, it's very important to be prepared how the West and the democratic world really wants Russia to be, and not that we can intervene, no, that's not the idea, and that's really not, but that we say, when you want to be a normal country, this is basically the possibility. A free federal state inside with a UN security seat, with probably 28, I propose, or maybe 30, maybe 50 federal states, with human and property rights according to the Council of Europe, with UN rights and human rights as it should be, and then peaceful with the world together in this cooperation, maybe also with an Eastern Partnership Agreement with the EU, maybe with a free trade agreement, and maybe with a security agreement with NATO, but definitely with a Security Council seat, and definitely along federal and free concepts, which I think is very important to make it very clear for all the different nations in Russia how this future might look. And then basically by time, I'm confident there will be this understanding, and there will be reforms and openness as well in Russia and China. And basically this is the concept for reforming the UN, and also reforming Russia and China over time, and also helping the other regional integration systems very much to repeat the enormous success of the European Union, and also take more responsibility from the EU in Eastern Europe by membership of Ukraine. Obviously, I've made the point already. So basically that's the general concept, and then I will break it down in various smaller videos how to implement it and how the various regions should look, and I will discuss all the 10 regions and all the 10 EU Security Council members. What is now important is also very important, the funding. And please, I want to make very sure that we spend too less, because ETI is basically a taxpayers movement, and so you will be surprised for me to say that, but very much we have to distribute the institutions better globally, because most of them sit in America and in Europe at the moment. Only in Nairobi I see a UN agency. That's not good. They must be also in Latin America, they must be also in Africa, they must be also very much in Asia. And then also the financial situation must be improved. Basically, it should be 0.2% of GDP for each UN Security member, Council member. That is basically the idea. So it should be like the US is a direct member as a state union. So it is 0.2% of GDP for the UN. And the EU is a similar situation, and basically it's per country 0.1, and per regional integration system it's 0.1 as well. So a two-level system if you want, but adding up that basically all the global GDP should be 0.2%, and that would be already a massive improvement of the budget, probably 3 times bigger. And you've seen with Corona, but you see it with the refugee crisis, with a lot of issues. The UN has really very, very excellent sector organizations from the World Health Organization. Needs reform, needs more budget. Absolutely, but there is so many very important organizations, and they all need serious budgeting. The way President Trump has handled that situation to cut the budget is totally wrong. We need more money for global governance. Of course, not unlimited. There must be supervision. There must be control about this. That's all very true. But certainly we should have a UN global governance budget in that sector for about 170 billion, I would say. That would be 2%, 2 promille of 0.2% of global GDP. And that would be, I think, a very good budget for global governance in this first and most important pillar, the UN, and that could be also an incentive for UN reform when the West is ready to pay more and to take more responsibility financially. Then maybe also other sides would say, okay, we see that's very serious now, we understand it's very important, and you are very serious with this reform, you fund more, okay, let's go into the political reform. I think the African Union would be really very pleased, and also India would be very pleased to have a UN Security Council seat permanently. Also the OAS would be very pleased. Also the Southeast Asian countries would be very pleased, and also the OIC, the Organization of Islamic Countries, would be very pleased to have a permanent seat. So there might be a lot of allies out there for such a reform, and I think it would be very positive. But also it will cost more. But what we have seen now, we had a bit of a chaotic first phase of globalization after the end of the Cold War, but now we need a little bit of better governed globalization, better governed from migration, from vaccination, from health situations, from transport situation. We need to get a little bit of a good, decent, good governance, rule of law, regulated approach towards the current issues, in order to also have more legitimacy for more openness. Because when you don't have a good regulation, good governance, but a perception of chaos, as we had, for example, 2015 very much, then you lose obviously this kind of public support for openness, for free trade, for openness towards migration, towards new ideas. You have this protectionist retreat of Brexit and Trump. So that's the consequence when the things are not seen as the mainstream, and the institutions have the situation under control. With Syria, with migration, there was a lot of the fear breeds then protectionism or xenophobic feeling. So we have to make sure that the population, the electorates and the elites and the media have not just the perception that we have the situation well governed and under control insofern that it's regulated, but we have to really regulate it decently. That's what the free market very much is about, the rule of law. Otherwise it's chaos. Yeah? The rule of law must be more or less also globally available. It cannot be the black holes of chaos like in Libya after 2011, and then you have all these issues. Or Syria, this is simply that really threatens the whole project, yeah? Or this kind of public health crisis which we have now, which exposes a lot of problems in vaccinations, in public health access, which we have also in the Western world. So these are all very, very serious and very problematic issues which threaten then the very fundament of freedom and prosperity which our post-war World War order and the post-Cold War order is so successfully built on. So better regulation costs money, but it's very necessary for the second stage of globalization, for the next, hopefully even more successful 30 years to come. Thanks a lot.